I get it, shopping for a lab fridge feels like scrolling through a sea of glossy images, only to end up with a unit that looks perfect on paper but leaves you scrambling when you finally open the door. The biggest fear is that you'll spend a good chunk of money on something that can't actually hold the reagents you need at the right temperature, or that it'll take up more space than you have on a crowded bench. That hesitation is why I wanted to dig into the ACCUCOLD ARG1ML before I hit add to cart. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the ARG1ML sits in the compact corner of the laboratory refrigerator market. It's a 1 cubic foot unit, which translates to roughly a foot of depth, a foot of width, and a little over a foot of height. For a teaching lab that only needs to keep a handful of enzyme solutions, a few sample plates, and some buffers chilled, that footprint can actually be a lifesaver. The glass door is another design choice you'll notice right away. Instead of a solid steel door you have to open and stare at the interior, the clear panel lets you glance at the contents without disturbing the temperature. In a busy environment where you're pulling tubes in and out every few minutes, that can shave a few seconds off each access and reduce the number of times the compressor has to kick back on. Temperature control on the ARG1ML is fairly straightforward. The unit offers a single temperature setting that can be dialed down to about 2°C above ambient, which is exactly what most biology labs need for short-term storage of reagents that aren't ultrasensitive. I've seen a lot of smaller fridge models that claim precise control but actually drift several degrees when the door is opened repeatedly. In practice, the ACCUCOLD's thermostat holds steady enough that you won't have to constantly recalibrate your experiments because a vial warmed up by a half degree. That consistency is a practical strength if your workflow revolves around things like PCR master mixes, which can tolerate a few degrees but start to degrade quickly if you push the limit. One hidden trade-off, though, is the temperature range itself. The ARG1ML doesn't go below 2°C, so if you need to keep anything that requires a true 0°C or sub-zero environment, think certain antibodies, some tissue samples, or specialized media, you'll quickly find this unit falling short. It's also not designed for the kind of continuous, high-load operation you see in a clinical pathology lab where dozens of racks are cycling in and out all day. The compressor is sized for moderate use, and a few reviewers have noted a mild hum that becomes more noticeable if the unit sits directly against a wall with no ventilation space. In a tight bench setup that's already noisy, that could be a small but irritating drawback. Who should walk away from the ARG1ML? If you're a hobbyist researcher, a high school science classroom, or a small research group that only needs a single shelf of reagents, this fridge hits a sweet spot between price and functionality. It's also a decent fit for a field station where you need a portable, compact cooler that can plug into a standard outlet without a dedicated service panel. On the flip side, if your lab runs a constant flow of samples, needs sub-2°C storage, or requires a multi-door configuration for separate temperature zones, you'll probably be better off looking at a larger, more robust model that explicitly advertises those capabilities. Another practical point I discovered when looking at the specifications is the interior layout. The ARG1ML comes with a single adjustable shelf, which is fine for a few small boxes, but it doesn't have the sliding drawers or modular racks you see on higher-end units. That means you have to plan your storage geometry in advance. If you're the type who likes to stack a mix of 15 ml tubes, 50 ml conical tubes, and a few reagent bottles together, you may find the fixed shelf a bit limiting. The upside is that the glass door makes it easy to see exactly what you have before you decide to rearrange anything, so you can keep a mental inventory without opening the door and losing a few degrees of chill. Energy consumption is another angle that often gets glossed over in product listings. Because the unit is small and its compressor only needs to maintain a modest temperature range, it typically draws less power than a full-size laboratory fridge. In a lab that runs 24/7, that can translate to a noticeable reduction on the electricity bill over a year. Of course, you still want to place the fridge in a well-ventilated spot, because if the back of the unit gets too hot, the compressor will work harder, negating those savings. From a durability standpoint, ACCUCOLD's MedLab Performance Series label suggests it's built for the kind of day-to-day where you expect in a research environment. The stainless steel exterior and the sealed glass door are both resistant to the occasional splash of liquid, which is something you'll appreciate when you're working with volatile solvents.